In second generation form, Kia's Picanto is a little city car with much bigger ideas. A glance at the styling and the mainstream engine lineup might not suggest that much dramatic change has taken place, but don't be deceived. A fundamental redesign has transformed the kind of car this can be.
Here's how we used to understand small car categorisation and the difference between Fiesta-sized superminis and their smaller, cheaper city car counterparts. Now, you paid extra for a supermini because it was slightly bigger, because it was better finished and more stylish, and because it had more refined engines that made longer journeys possible. So, where does that kind of thinking leave us with a product like this, the third generation Kia Picanto? It competes with the kind of models that we'd see as city cars, yet like many of them now, it boasts the kind of interior space the supposedly bigger Fiesta or Corsa had until not long ago. It's very nicely built and acceptably stylish, and yes, it's quite at home attempting longer journeys. Here then is the city car all grown up. Now, where that leaves today's supermini sector is something we don't have to worry about here. Suffice it to say, though, that most of what you pay up to £15,000 or more for in that class of car is delivered by this Kia. This model line dates back to 2004, when in first generation form it helped to establish the now accepted template for the kind of more mature, capable city car that we've just been describing, one that the European makers took years to subsequently copy. The Mark II model Picanto, announced in 2011, added an extra dash of style and quality to the equation, but by then the opposition was catching up, and by the time that this third generation model was launched here in the early summer of 2017, it was clear that another big step forward was going to be needed, and that apparently is exactly what's been delivered here. It's still small, which is what buyers want, but a longer wheelbase has made it bigger inside, and it's delivered a larger boot. There's more assertive styling, there's a classier interior, and stronger standards of safety and media connectivity. Perhaps most importantly, though, there's now more of a supermini style driving experience. That's thanks to a lighter, stiffer body structure, improved refinement, and the option of a sophisticated 1-litre TGDI turbo petrol engine at the top of the range. As usual with Kia, all the engineering is shared with a related Hyundai model, but the Picanto delivers it with a longer 7-year warranty, and that's been a major factor in making this car Kia's 4th best-selling global model. The competition in the city car segment is fierce though, so how does this contender measure up? Let's find out. Previous Picanto models were great for popping down to the shops, but they weren't so good at venturing further afield. Now, customers are often prepared to forgive that kind of limitation if the little runabout in question is fun to punt around, but this car's predecessor was rather lacking there too. It wasn't bad to drive, but an overly light steering rack and a soft riding, corner rolling gait discouraged you from wanting to push it along with any real sense of brio, all of which explains why in developing this third generation model, Kia's engineers felt such a fundamental dynamic redesign was necessary. A new, lighter body is bolted to a completely fresh platform, and the resulting structure is 40% more torsionally rigid. Plus, the anti-roll bars are stiffer, and the springs and dampers have been retuned. As a result, stability at speed is much improved, as is grip and lateral body control. Put all that to the test by attacking a corner with a little extra purpose, and you might also notice 2 further Mark III model changes. For almost the first time on any mainstream city car, there's a torque vectoring system. That's one of those setups that transfers traction to the wheel that can best use it as you power through a turn. Now, that is nice to have, but it's not as fundamentally significant as the improvement we've appreciated most with this third generation model, the quicker, better weighted and more direct steering rack. For us, it's this more than anything else that has made this car so much more engaging and enjoyable this time around. Now, the old model claimed to have the driving manners of a larger small car. This one actually does. Now, to complement this, Kia has gone to a lot of effort to try to enhance standards of refinement. They've added in soundproofing panels and sound absorbent foam. They've redesigned the engine mounts to reduce vibration, and they've even lowered the windscreen wiper placement to reduce wind noise at speed. As a result, this car has been rated as the quietest model in the class when idling, 39 decibels of noise, or at a steady cruise, 68 decibels. Now what Kia won't tell you is that this is very definitely not the quietest car in the class when the need arises to press on a bit. Push either of the two mainstream power plants past 4,000 RPM and you'll be made very aware that the engine's operating well outside its comfort zone. If you opt for the entry-level 3-cylinder 1-litre unit, then you're likely to be needing to do that rather a lot. With just 66 bhp on tap and only 96 Nm of pulling power, this 12-valve variant is fine for short urban journeys. For a trip to the shops, rest to 62 capability of 13.8 seconds is obviously quite sufficient. But get to a hill or a motorway, or heaven forbid a hilly motorway, and you're going to be seriously wishing that you'd stumped up the small extra premium for the 4-cylinder 1.25 litre MPI unit that we're trying here. Now, we're not going to suggest that this alternative 83 bhp 16-valve engine is any kind of ball of fire, because it definitely isn't. But in switching from the 1-litre variant, you'll really notice a 25% boost in pulling power that reduces the need to be continually rowing the car along with the gear lever. The rest to 62 miles an hour sprint time improved to 11.6 seconds, and the academic top speed is 107 miles an hour, which for the record is 6 miles an hour more than the base variant can manage. You'll have to have the 1.25 litre unit if you want the option of automatic transmission. That's a 4-speed setup that seriously blunts both performance and efficiency, so avoid it if possible. Both the engines I've just mentioned have been carried over from the previous generation model, albeit with minor changes to improve performance and emissions. The third Picanto power plant, though, is completely new. It's borrowed from the brand's larger Rio Supermini, and it's very definitely the option to go for if you can afford to stretch to it. The 998cc turbo petrol 3-cylinder unit in question is one that Kia has developed to take on the similar downsized 3-pot turbo engines that are now available from some other brands in the segment. Like Ford's similarly configured 1-litre EcoBoost power plant, the Picanto's 1-litre TGDI unit doesn't come with a balancer shaft to improve its refinement, so there is plenty of buzzy thrumminess under hard acceleration. Still, our experience with this engine suggests that that sensation isn't unpleasant, and, well, it could almost be said to add something to the character of the car. There's 99 bhp on tap and 172 Nm of pulling power. So in other words, you get a useful dose of extra grunt in comparison to what can be provided by this 1.25 litre model. 62 miles an hour from rest in the TGDI variant occupies 10.1 seconds en route to a maximum of 112 mph. Let's finish with a specific focus on the Picanto's aptitude for the environment in which you'll be using it most around town. Now, certainly all the design basics are good. You get a light clutch and a slick 5-speed gear change, plus a deep, wide windscreen, slim front pillars and a low waistline. They all contribute to great all-round visibility, and you're going to need that in the tight city streets or at junctions and roundabouts. There's a relatively compact 9.4 metre turning circle, and slotting into difficult spaces is either easy or very easy, depending on whether or not you've got a top variant like this one fitted with rear parking sensors and a rear view camera. As for that firmer ride, well, no, it's not as smooth over urban tarmac tears as some rivals, notably the Volkswagen Up design, but it's perfectly acceptable, keeping occupants isolated from all but the deepest potholes that no city car can ever completely avoid. Size matters when it comes to city car motoring. Buyers want as much space as possible inside extremely compact exterior dimensions, which will allow them to thread their way easily through narrow, crowded streets and to park in hard-to-find spaces. As one of the most experienced brands in the segment, Kia knows this better than most and claims here to have created a car to perfectly suit that demanding brief. This Picanto's small, says Gregory Guillaume, the Korean maker's head of European design, but someone forgot to tell it that. Now we know what he means. At around 3.6 metres long and around 1.6 metres wide, the third generation version of this model shares exactly the same dimensions as its predecessor, which means it certainly still qualifies as one of the tiniest cars you can buy. At the same time though, changes to the wheelbase and the rear overhang have created significantly more space inside. Now we'll get to that in a minute, but let's start with exterior design that's delivered with a bit more attitude this time around, especially in the case of this newly created GT line version. Kia's advertising uses words like youthful and energetic, and like rivals, peppers its marketing with pictures of 20-something fashionistas parking their Picantos outside cafes and boutiques, ignoring the fact that a significant number of potential buyers will be retirees. Still, the finished look should appeal to both demographics. The previous model's cute and cheeky demeanour has been replaced by a bolder, more assertive look here. This distinctive tiger nose upper grille that sits between these larger, sleeker headlights is there for show. Cooling's actually taken care of by this now larger lower intake, which comes framed on GT line models by these menacing twin front fog lamps and distinctive ribbed corner vents. Move to the side and you'll find that in profile this Picanto's become classier but a touch more generic. The previous model's quite memorable, aggressively upward slanting waist level crease is no more. That's been replaced here by a less noticeable horizontal swage line. These scalloped surrounds have made the wheel arches look a bit more interesting though, and they house more stylish rims that vary in size between 14 and 16 inches. We've got the larger wheel size fitted here. From this perspective, previous owners might also notice the fractional 5mm height increase that this third generation model features over its predecessor. And of course, we ought to note that this 5-door body style is these days the only one on offer. That reflects the fact that this configuration is what over 90% of city car buyers now want. At the rear, the larger C-shaped tail lamp clusters feature LED illumination on this top model, and they've been pushed right out to the corner of the car to give a wider look. And the same's true of the lower lamps incorporated into this now chunkier bumper. Does a little city car with less than 100 bhp beneath the bonnet really need a twin exhaust? Well, possibly not, but it does look good anyway. As does this roof spoiler that aids the aerodynamics and also houses the high-level brake light. As usual, of course, of more importance is the stuff you can't see. Now, this body shell is built on Kia's immensely strong new H platform and uses almost twice as much high-strength steel as the previous generation model did. And that makes the structure not only safer and more robust, but also 23 kilos lighter. Okay, time to take a seat inside, at which point you discover that it's not only the driving dynamics of this car that have been taken up a class. Certainly this cabin now punches well above its price point. That's providing you can afford to stretch beyond the cheaper trim levels. It's all a very long way from the not too distant days when interiors across the city car segment had all the stylistic appeal of a telephone box. Now true, some of the plastic used are still a little hard to the touch, but you would expect that in a city car. And anyway, everything's so nicely integrated that you don't really notice these unusual air vents vertically bookmarking either end of the fascia, and the dashboard divided into upper and lower sections by this satin chrome strip. Now that's been classily integrated into the design, in contrast to the previous model where silver trimming was daubed around the cabin with all the subtlety of a child's painting. There are disappointments though, and one of those comes when you try to get yourself comfortable behind this steering wheel that you'll find still doesn't adjust for reach, only for height. The few buyers who opt for the entry trim level will also have to deal with the way that cheapest variant makes you do without height adjustment for both the seat and the seat belt. These things though are of course standard further up the range, and all versions of this Picanto can offer well-aligned pedals and great all-round visibility thanks to these slim A-pillars and a now lower window line. The seats are very supportive too, and they feature proper separately adjustable head restraints, and that's in contrast to the much less comfortable chairs that you get in many rivals, which feature a one-piece design with integrated headrests. What else? Well, the instruments you view through the 3-spoke wheel are clear and smart, particularly if you've got yourself a version featuring this central 2.6-inch Supervision monochrome cluster display between the two main dials. As for infotainment, well, it's a case of two extremes. Unless you stretch to pricey level 3 trim or this flagship GT line S-Spec, you don't even get a DAB radio. But if you can buy in at the top of the range, you'll get, as standard, a class-leadingly sophisticated media setup that's able to put rivals to shame. And we've got that here, a 7-inch touchscreen which sits proud at the top of the dash, just like the monitor would in a BMW or a Mercedes. This comes complete with navigation, a reversing camera, Wi-Fi options, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone projection mirroring connectivity, and a full suite of Kia connected services. Now these include TomTom driven speed camera location warnings and live updates on traffic and weather. With no complaints in terms of cabin storage, you get 2 decently sized cup holders between the seats, a reasonably sized glove box, door pockets that are large enough to take a small water bottle, and a tray for your phone that's close to the 12-volt aux-in and USB ports. Only an overhead sunglasses compartment is missing. Plusher variants like this one also get this central armrest which slides back and forth over a range of 55mm and opens to reveal another storage area that's big enough to take a 1-litre bottle. Most models get Bluetooth connectivity, and in this top GT Line S derivative there's this neat driver's side illuminated sun visor mirror and even a wireless phone charger mat. Now if you are graduating into this Mark III model Picanto from the previous generation version, you might also notice the slightly roomier feel you get up front here. Now that is thanks to Kia's rather surprising decision to build the extra space freed up by the 15mm wheelbase length increase into this part of the car rather than grant it for the benefit of the poor old folks stuck in the back. So let's take a look at how those in the back will fare. Now the door openings aren't especially wide, but then that is the case with most cars in this class. Once inside, you'll find a decent level of roominess for this class of car, providing you stick with the carriage of just a couple of adults. Now, these people will find their knees pressed up against the front seat backs when anyone even remotely tall is seated up front, but then that's also the case with virtually every other model in this segment. On the plus side, the small increase in roof height delivered this time around is welcome. The slightly more reclined backrest angle should help on longer trips, and the lower window line of this third generation design will make children feel less claustrophobic. Now on that subject, we'd also point out that 3 belts are provided back here. Bear in mind that in city cars from VW, Seat, Skoda, Peugeot, Citroën and Toyota, you only get 2, which could be seriously annoying for family folk. The brands I've just mentioned don't give you properly opening rear side windows either, let alone the electrically operated ones that are fitted to most Picanto variants. It is a pity you don't get door pockets though. There is a seat back pocket on the left hand side. Still, you do get an armrest with a little incorporated cubby below the window on each side, plus there are ISOFIX child seat mounts on the 2 outer seats. Finally, let's take a look in the boot. The size of this has been increased courtesy of a 10mm increase in the length of this rear overhang. Now that doesn't sound like much, but what's been delivered here is quite a big step forward from what was on offer before. So raise the light upright tailgate and a 255-litre cargo bay is revealed. Now that is 55 litres more than the previous generation Picanto model could provide, and the space can be accessed via a loading lip that's now 55mm lower too. Now that's a massive amount more than some contenders in this class can provide. A Toyota Aygo, for example, has a boot only 168 litres in size. Only Ford's KA Plus can better the cargo area on offer here, and that model can't get near the capacity of this Kia when you push forward the rear bench. Before we do that though, we'll note the useful practicality of this dual height boot floor you get on this flagship GT Line S version, and bemoan the fact that it can't be fitted, even as an option, to variants further down the range. We will compliment Kia though for fitting a proper 60/40 split folding rear backrest in a segment where a number of rivals leave you stuck with a less flexible 50/50 split setup. Now push that forward and a 1010 litre space is provided, although there is quite a step up over the folded seat base if you're going to push items towards the back of it. Still, the room freed up is more than a lot of superminis can offer from the next class up. At one point in the middle of the years in which we saw the government-funded scrappage scheme, you could pick up a new Picanto for no more than around £4,000, making it then the cheapest new car available in the UK. But that was in the noughties with the first generation model, and that sold as part of a Kia lineup which was back then very budget orientated. In the decade or so that's gone by since, much has changed. I mean, a Kia today is every bit the equal of any respected volume brand, and it's priced to match that aspiration. Now, in this case, that almost certainly means paying a five-figure sum for ownership. Now, true, there is a basically trimmed entry-level 1-litre variant priced at around £9,500, but otherwise, mainstream model Picanto pricing sits in the £11,000 to £15,000 bracket, with most variants being sold at the lower end of that spectrum. You'll need a little detail on the range itself. Now, you only get this 5-door body style this time around. Kia stopped offering the 3-door option halfway through the previous Mark II model's life cycle because so few customers wanted it. Now, as usual in the city car segment, there's no diesel option, but there is a reasonable choice of petrol units. Now, providing you've avoided entry-level trim, you'll be offered the choice of paying a £500 premium to upgrade yourself from the base 66 bhp 1-litre 3-cylinder variant to the 83 bhp 1.25-litre 4-cylinder MPI power plant we're trying here. And that's an engine that can be ordered with 4-speed automatic transmission for an extra £650. The Peugeot 99 bhp 1-litre TGDI 3-cylinder turbo unit comes only with plusher trim, which restricts it to the upper reaches of the Picanto price list. So what are the alternatives to this Kia in the city car segment, and how does this Picanto model's value proposition stack up against them? Well, let's take a look. The Korean brand would like to think that more trendily trimmed versions of this car could maybe snare a few potential buyers of really fashion-conscious contenders in the segment like Fiat's 500 or Vauxhall's Adam. But those generally pricier 3-door only models, well, they really tend to play to a slightly different audience. So let's think instead of more conventional city car rivals, and primarily perhaps the two designs that dominate the European market in this class. Now, by which we mean either the car that's known either as a Volkswagen Up, a Skoda Citigo or a Seat Mii, or the one sold as either a Peugeot 108, a Citroën C1 or a Toyota Aygo. Now, base versions of all these models can be had for Picanto money, and they do offer strong competition, although there are issues. The Peugeot, Citroën, Toyota design has a much smaller boot than this Kia, and the VW Skoda Seat option delivers, well, slightly less performance and equipment than mainstream versions of this Picanto. You might find some of the other contenders in this class a touch easier to dismiss. Hyundai's i10 shares the same mainstream engines as this Kia, and it's priced at almost exactly the same level. But at the time of this Mark III model Picanto's launch in 2017, it was a generation behind in terms of design. Entry-level versions of Ford's Ka+, Renault's Twingo and Fiat's Panda, they're all significantly off the pace when it comes to fuel and CO2 returns. Vauxhall's Viva, that has a very restricted engine range, and most versions of Mitsubishi's Mirage Duro and the Smart 4.4 are quite ambitiously priced. Talking of price, inevitably there are a few small cars that are cheaper than this one in the class. You would save a little by going for an MG3 and potentially a couple of thousand or so by choosing either a Suzuki Celerio or a Dacia Sandero. Both the MG and the Dacia, though, would cost a bit more to run, and all three lack not only the driving dynamics of this Kia, but also some of its clever design touches. In other words, as usual in life, you get what you don't pay for. If that's your perspective, and after a lot of deliberation, you conclude that the deal you're being offered on this Picanto is indeed just too good to miss, then you're going to need to know exactly how generous the Korean brand has been with that standard specification. So let's take a look at that. Now, you wouldn't expect bargain basement 1 trim to include much more than the basics, and that is pretty much what you get. So things like daytime running lights, electric front windows, trip computer, 60/40 split folding rear seats, and USB and aux-in ports for the 2-speaker audio system. Which is why almost all potential buyers of this car will start their perusal of the lineup from the mid-range 2 trim level, if only to get the option of the Peugeot 1.25 litre engine and automatic transmission. Now, this delivers you far more the kind of Picanto you'll be able to park on your driveway with some degree of satisfaction. So the quality of look and feel goes up a few notches, courtesy of 14-inch alloy wheels, smarter premium black cloth fabric, leather trimming for the steering wheel and the gear knob, a high gloss finish for the fascia, chrome edging for the black radiator grille, and body colouring for the door mirrors, and those are powered and heated. The audio system, that gains a couple of extra speakers, although unfortunately not a DAB tuner. And Kia will also throw in air conditioning, Bluetooth and rear electric windows. Need something a bit more dynamic? Well, if so, you might be interested by the thought of the sportier GT line trim level that Kia has included in the range for the first time. Now, this is a Picanto variant that shares its spec with the 2 trimmed version, but further adds a package of features that are intended to deliver a more sporting demeanour. So 16-inch alloy wheels, twin exhaust pipes, sportier bumpers, coloured side sill mouldings, rear privacy glass, front fog lamps and LED technology for the daytime running lights and the rear lamp clusters. Inside, GT line buyers get a 6-speaker audio system, stainless steel pedals and black and red faux leather upholstery. Want more? Well, if so, then the top GT Line S and plush Picanto 3 variants beckon. Your choice between the two will depend on your preference between a sportier package or a merely quite luxurious feeling one. In both cases, you get automatic air conditioning, cruise control with a speed limiter, front fog lights, rear parking sensors and power folding mirrors. There's also a useful storage box between the front seats that doubles as a sliding armrest. If you don't want to go further, then it's this GT Line S variant that you have to have. Now, like the ordinary GT Line derivative I just mentioned, it comes with 16-inch wheels. The Picanto 3 variant rides on 15-inch rims, and of course you get all the other sporty GT Line embellishments. That's in addition to virtually all the luxury extras you could reasonably expect from a city car. So things like heat for the steering wheel and the front seats, an electric sunroof, a wireless mobile phone charger, a dual height luggage area floor and keyless entry. We should also mention that you have to choose either a Picanto 3 or a GT Line S model to get the benefit of the media connectivity upgrades that Kia has developed for this third generation Picanto. Now, with both these two top versions, you get a standard, a 7-inch centre dash colour touchscreen incorporating satellite navigation, a 6-speaker DAB audio system, voice recognition, a reversing camera and the option to connect in your mobile handset via the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto smartphone projection mirroring systems. Also included are TomTom powered Kia connected services that include a live traffic feature that warns you of hold-ups ahead, plus it'll give you speed camera alerts, weather forecasts and a local search system that'll help you find shops, restaurants and places of interest. So, what about options? Well, Kia doesn't offer a huge range of extra cost items. The brand prefers instead to encourage customers to move up a trim level if additional equipment is required. However, there are a few things that you might like to look at. If you don't want the standard Blue Breeze paint finish, you can choose to pay £250 more to have your Picanto painted in clear white, or spend around £500 more on one of the 5 further optional metallic shades, including the chili red of the car we've got here today. And it's possible to further embellish this with a body styling kit, and that includes side skirts, a tailgate trim line and door mirror caps, all items also available individually and colour coded in silver, black or red. To upgrade the interior, there's LED footwell illumination and puddle lights that project the Kia logo onto the ground when you get out at night. And practical optional touches include rubber floor mats and a rear bumper protection foil that prevents scratches as you lift things in and out of the boot. So let's finish by looking at this car from a safety perspective. The stiffer body is good news in this regard, but there's also a lot else to talk about. It's now no longer acceptable to launch a city car that can't be fitted out with autonomous emergency braking. That's one of those systems that scans the road ahead as you drive in search of potential hazards before automatically braking if you don't respond to the warnings. Now, this feature is standard if you go for a Picanto 3 or one of the 2 GT Line variants. On lower lower trim levels, you can get that as part of an optional advanced driving assistance pack, and that also includes an upgraded instrument binnacle with Kia's 2.6-inch SuperVision cluster display. As for more familiar safety stuff, well, Kia provides every model with twin front, side and curtain airbags, as well as ISOFIX child seat mounts on the two outer rear seats. To help avoid a collision in the first place, all Picantos have ABS anti-lock brakes, ESP stability control and a tyre pressure monitoring system. There's also emergency stop signalling to warn other drivers when you're pulling up in a hurry, while hill start assist prevents the car from rolling backwards as you pull away on steep inclines. In some respects here, it's a case of what could have been. This third generation Picanto model's stiffer body and more sophisticated H platform achieve weight savings of 23 kilos in comparison to the previous generation version. Now, if Kia had been able to capitalise on this and then add in its ISG engine start-stop system, then this would have been easily the market's most efficient city car, but it hasn't turned out that way. Those structural weight savings have been swallowed up by the need to include additional media and safety features this time around. Plus, there's extra soundproofing on this Mark III model too. And the ISG start-stop system hasn't been included because changes to the government vehicle excise duty rates have diluted the significant running cost savings that such a setup would previously have had. Kia points out that even so, all versions of this Picanto produce less CO2 than before. So for the small but significant number of business users who are looking at this car, benefit-in-kind taxation rates will fall. Private folk will simply want to be reassured that the fuel and CO2 readings stack up competitively against rival models in this class, and they do. The base 3-cylinder 66 bhp 1 litre variant manages 64.2 mpg on the combined cycle and 101 grams per kilometre of CO2. For the 4-cylinder 1.25 litre MPI model we're trying here, the figures are 61.4 mpg and 106 grams per kilometre. Let's give you some segment perspective on those figures. You're talking of readings that are a little behind those you'd get from the Peugeot 108 Citroën C1 design, but stats that are on a par with what you'd get from a comparable Volkswagen Up, Seat Me or Skoda Citigo. That means that with a Picanto, you'll be getting figures that are way better than the returns achievable with entry-level versions of rival models like Ford's Ka+, Fiat's Panda and Renault's Twingo. There's no real downside in opting for the Peugeot 99 bhp 1 litre TGDI 3-cylinder turbo engine, although there you do get an engine stop-start system, and that helps bring the fuel and CO2 readings roughly in line with those of the normally aspirated models. Do be aware though that choosing the automatic gearbox option that you can have with the 1.25 litre power plant will make a severe dent in your running cost returns. They fall to 52.3 mpg and 124 grams per kilometre. So what about other expenses you might incur? Well, regular maintenance is required every 10,000 miles or 12 months, whichever comes around sooner. And as usual with a Kia, you can budget ahead with prepaid servicing plans, and that's courtesy of the brand's Care 3 package that offers a fixed price deal which covers your first 3 garage visits, and that's a package that can be extended to include 5 visits if you go for the upgraded Care 3 Plus option. You can also bundle an MOT test in with this, and on that basis you'll have the peace of mind of knowing that virtually all maintenance costs will probably have been covered for the entire time that your name's on the logbook. As for residual values, well, independent experts CAP reckon that these will be class leading. At the time of this car's launch, the organisation reckoned that after the usual 3-year 60,000 mile ownership period, a Mark III Picanto would be worth 36% of its original asking price. Now the closest that any rival can get to that is Volkswagen's Up, which is rated at 31%. Renault's Twingo and Seat's Me will return only 24%, and Fiat's Panda is down at just 23%. This Kia's much trumpeted 7-year 100,000 mile warranty helps in terms of depreciation, as like the Care 3 servicing packages, it is transferable to future owners. However, it's worth pointing out that the bumper-to-bumper complete car part of the warranty only actually lasts 5 years. The extra 2 years of cover are restricted to the engine and the gearbox. If the car's sold sold through a Kia used approved dealership when it's less than 18 months old or with less than 18,000 miles on the clock, the warranty will be topped up to match that of a new model. And finally, you might want to note that roadside assistance cover is limited to 1 year, but you do get a long 12-year bodywork warranty. As for insurance, well, the 1 litre 66 bhp model is rated at either Group 4, 5 or 6, depending on the trim level you select. For this 1.25 litre variant, the groupings vary between 8 and 10. The days when all a citycar had to be was small, frugal and cheap are long gone. Those things now are given in this sector. For success in this segment today, such an urban runabout has to be stylish, practical and realistic for longer journeys as well as shorter ones. Now the need to achieve all of that while still being supremely economic must present one almighty headache to vehicle designers, but by and large, this car achieves it. Of course, we're not pretending that this Picanto's perfect. In fact, it's not really radically different or brilliant in any particular area. What's important though is that it does almost everything well. It's nicely made, it's properly safe, and thanks to the stiffer chassis, it's now much better to drive, and quieter than it was before too. It's competitively priced, it gets a class-leading warranty, and in terms of media connectivity, it easily matches the segment standard, at least on the top variants anyway. Plus, this third generation design now offers everything you'd want in terms of interior space efficiency. I mean, put simply, if you were blindfolded and then placed in one of these and told it was a larger Fiesta-sized supermini, well, you'd have no trouble in believing that. Are there issues? Well, only a few. The entry trim level feels very Spartan. Plus, we are a little underwhelmed by the cheapest 1 litre engine, and we wish that the top TGDI turbo unit could be made more affordable. We are disappointed too by Kia's decision to drop the ISG engine stop-start system with the volume 1.25 litre variant. Aside from that though, the report card looks pretty strong. And in summary, well, for sure you can spend less on a 5-door city car. After trying one of these though, we think you probably won't want to.